Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. The morning of September 23rd, 2018, seemed like any other in a quiet suburban home on the outskirts of Mount Holly. Two young girls were playing nearby, while their mother, 32-year-old Stacy Hansaker, was resting in the living room. Everything was calm until her husband, Joshua, suddenly noticed something was terribly wrong. Stacy wasn't responding, and she wasn't breathing. According to Joshua, he immediately called emergency services. First responders arrived to find Stacy lying on the couch. Her skin had turned bluish, and her body temperature was dangerously low. Paramedics were unable to detect a heartbeat, confirming that she had passed before they arrived. Despite urgent life-saving efforts, there was nothing they could do. Stacy was pronounced dead at the scene. At first, the unexpected passing of the young mother didn't raise immediate suspicion. Medical professionals were aware that Stacy had a history of heart issues. She had a pacemaker and had occasionally experienced concerning symptoms. On the surface, it seemed like a tragic but not unusual case of a patient with a serious cardiac condition. But something felt off. What stood out wasn't just the sudden nature of her passing, it was Joshua's reaction. He firmly and immediately refused an autopsy. He claimed Stacy wouldn't have wanted any invasive procedures and said she wished to be left in peace. His stance was delivered without hesitation. With no obvious signs of foul play and lacking legal grounds to intervene, investigators and medical staff accepted his decision. No autopsy was performed. By the next day, Joshua had already arranged for cremation. Stacy's family, especially her mother, Susie, was stunned by how quickly everything was happening. Official death paperwork wasn't even finalized yet, but the body had already been transferred to a local funeral provider. The cause of death was listed as heart failure in the official documents. Joshua did not offer assistance with the funeral arrangements and kept his involvement to a minimum. Susie couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Despite Stacy's medical history, she had seemed vibrant and energetic just the day before. There were no signs that her condition had taken a turn. The speed and secrecy surrounding her final arrangements only fueled Susie's unease. She didn't yet know where to begin, but she felt something wasn't right. Joshua Hansaker was raised in Stanley, North Carolina. He came from what appeared to be a stable family environment and led an unremarkable life. He attended East Gaston High School in Mount Holly, a school that served youth from nearby towns. It was there that he met Stacy Robinson. Their relationship started in their teenage years and continued without interruption. Stacy was born on May 7, 1986, in Mecklenburg County. From an early age, she had been deeply involved with the local Methodist Church in Mount Holly, where she actively participated in community programs. Her commitment extended beyond weekly services. She volunteered with the YMCA, where she led youth activities and supported summer programs. On May 1, 2010, Joshua and Stacy were married. In February 2013, they welcomed a daughter, Piper Elizabeth. That same year, Stacy's health issues became more serious. Doctors diagnosed a cardiac condition that led to the installation of a pacemaker. Despite ongoing health concerns, life in the Hansaker household continued on. In the fall of 2014, Stacy gave birth to her second daughter, Willow Caroline, but her condition began to worsen after the delivery. That November, she was rushed to the hospital with an alarmingly low heart rate and blood pressure and was placed in intensive care. 2 months later, another critical episode occurred, this time cardiac arrest that required mechanical ventilation. Doctors were never able to determine exactly what triggered her decline. Around that same time, Joshua began working for Atrium Health as a paramedic on a medical helicopter team, providing the family with a steady income. They also purchased a home in the Catawba Heights neighborhood of Mount Holly. a spacious 3-bedroom house ideal for their growing household. Stacy dedicated herself to raising her daughters, crafting handmade items, and capturing every meaningful moment of their lives in photographs. Despite her fragile health, she remained active. In 2015, a family friend launched a fundraising campaign on GoFundMe to help cover medical expenses. The page described complications Stacy had faced following her first pregnancy. From the outside, everything looked solid. 2 daughters, a steady job for Joshua, a new home, and community involvement. But Stacy's health remained precarious. She continued treatment and relied on her pacemaker. Still, Stacy herself never appeared anxious about her condition. Those around her often remarked how she lived a normal life, fully immersed in caring for her family and managing the day-to-day. After Stacy's passing, her mother, Susie Robinson, learned something deeply unsettling. Even though Stacy had been a registered organ donor, the donation process had never been carried out. No one could explain why the medical organization responsible for managing such procedures failed to secure authorization to honor her decision. Joshua insisted that his actions aligned with her wishes, but he never provided any documentation to confirm that. The burden of organizing the funeral fell entirely on the Robinson family. Susie and her husband John handled every detail, from selecting an urn to publishing the obituary, on their own. During this time, Joshua showed little sign of deep mourning. He made no effort to stay in touch with Stacy's family. What disturbed them even more was what happened just weeks after Stacy's passing. Another woman moved into the house. Joshua had begun living openly with someone new. She quickly became a visible presence in the home, the same one where Stacy had lived, and integrated herself into daily life with the daughters. It all happened with surprising speed. There were no conversations, no explanations offered to Stacy's family, and no consideration given to how the daughters would adjust to the sudden changes in their lives. The Robinson family couldn't ignore how quickly Joshua seemed to move on with his life. He never mentioned seeking guidance from mental health professionals or reaching out for advice on how to talk to Piper and Willow about the loss of their mother. Every decision appeared to be made on his own, without involving Stacy's family or considering their perspective during the adjustment process. Susie found herself increasingly unsettled by Joshua's behavior. It didn't resemble what most people would expect from someone grieving a loved one. She understood that everyone processes loss differently, but she wasn't alone in her concern. Other family friends, who were aware of recent tension in the couple's relationship, also began to question his response. Some neighbors had even mentioned arguments between Stacy and Joshua in the weeks before her passing. Yet, even with that context, the sudden shift in his lifestyle felt too drastic to ignore. Within Susie's circle, conversations began to turn toward a difficult but necessary question. Was there more to Stacy's death than anyone realized? Eventually, Susie reached out to local authorities. She shared everything she had observed and formally requested an investigation. Her goal wasn't to assign blame. She simply wanted clarity. Was Stacy's passing truly the result of a medical condition, or was something being overlooked? That request would become a turning point in the case. From the very beginning, investigators faced a major hurdle. There was no body. With the cremation already completed, they had no way to conduct a post-mortem exam to determine the actual cause of death. But one procedural detail would prove critical. Under state protocols, when a registered organ donor passes away, the medical facility involved is required to collect and preserve biological samples, even if the organ donation itself is ultimately not carried out. In Stacy's case, blood samples taken immediately after her passing had been stored. They were transferred to LifeShare Donor Center, the organization responsible for donor coordination in the state. Normally, those samples aren't subject to further testing, but after Susie's formal request and the opening of an investigation, authorities were granted permission to access them. This development presented the only remaining opportunity for forensic analysis. When the samples reached the lab, expectations were modest. The official cause of death was listed as a cardiac condition, and few anticipated any surprises. But when toxicology testing was performed, the results raised immediate red flags. The analysis detected a substance called tetrahydrozoline in Stacy's bloodstream, and not just trace amounts. The concentration far exceeded what's considered safe or therapeutic. Tetrahydrozoline is a chemical compound found in over-the-counter eye drops, such as Visine and similar brands. It's used to reduce eye redness by narrowing blood vessels in the eyes. Normally, it works locally and doesn't enter the bloodstream in significant quantities. Even if accidentally swallowed, the effects are typically mild, especially for adults. In Stacy's case, the level of tetrahydrozoline found in her system was 30 to 40 times higher than what's considered safe for a human, ruling out the possibility of accidentally ingesting just a few drops. Such an extreme concentration could only have resulted from a significant dose, leading to full-body effects. From a medical standpoint, tetrahydrozoline in these amounts acts as a central nervous system depressant, causing dangerously low blood pressure, a slowed heart rate, and respiratory suppression. These symptoms can result in loss of consciousness, breathing failure, and ultimately death. Exactly what occurred the day Stacy passed. This new information shifted the understanding of her passing from a natural cardiac event to a likely case of poisoning. What made this situation especially unusual was the nature of the substance involved. Tetrahydrozoline is rarely associated with intentional harm. It's not typically included in standard toxicology screenings performed during autopsies. Investigators determined that the product containing tetrahydrozoline could be easily purchased over the counter at any pharmacy. It also has little to no taste or odor, especially when diluted, which means it could be added to a drink or food without the person noticing. With this in mind, the investigation turned toward the possibility of deliberate poisoning. Given that Joshua Hansacker had access to medical supplies and professional knowledge of how such substances work, he quickly became a central figure in the case. At that point, investigators began to look deeper into possible motives. Financial gain surfaced as a leading theory. According to banking and insurance documents, Joshua was listed as the sole beneficiary on 2 life insurance policies taken out on Stacy, one for $80,000 and another for $150,000. These policies had been in place well before her passing. Immediately after obtaining her death certificate, Joshua filed for the insurance payouts and received a total of $230,000. While his actions didn't violate any laws on the surface, the speed with which he moved raised serious concerns. Records revealed that he submitted the claims within a week of Stacy's death. At that time, the insurance companies had no reason to delay processing. The official documents listed her cause of death as natural. It wasn't until the case was reclassified as a criminal investigation that both insurers turned over copies of all related documents to law enforcement. A financial review showed that prior to Stacy's death, Joshua had been in debt with limited savings. His salary as a paramedic covered basic family expenses, but not all medical bills and household costs. After collecting the insurance money, he paid off outstanding debts, purchased new appliances, and began making home renovations. He also started spending on items that appeared out of step with his previous lifestyle. Additional suspicions arose due to inconsistencies in Joshua's accounts of the day Stacy passed. At first, he told emergency responders he found her unresponsive on the couch. Later, while speaking with paramedics and law enforcement, he claimed he attempted CPR, but it didn't work. But to Stacy's family, he said she had simply fallen asleep and stopped breathing while he was in another room. And to friends, he shared that she had complained of dizziness and weakness that morning. There was no way to confirm the exact timeline. Joshua's phone was turned off, and there were no surveillance cameras in the house. Attention soon turned to statements made by Joshua's co-workers. One of them recalled a disturbing moment from a few months before Stacy's passing. During a conversation about unusual poisoning cases and extreme self-harm methods, Joshua had made what was described as a joke, saying that someone could be harmed by adding eye drops to their drink. At the time, no one thought much of it, but in light of later events, the comment took on a much darker tone. Another coworker confirmed hearing a similar remark. Both gave formal statements noting that Joshua had shown a strong interest in pharmacology and was well versed in the effects of various substances. Investigators cross-referenced those comments with evidence found at the home, specifically a bottle of eye drops discovered in a kitchen drawer, not in a medicine cabinet or bathroom. The container was partially empty, and the volume appeared consistent with the dosage later found in Stacy's bloodstream. Neither Stacy nor the daughters had ever used eye medication. During interviews, no family members could explain why such a product would be in the home. In December 2019, nearly 15 months after Stacy Hansaker's death, Joshua Lee Hansaker was arrested in Gaston County on a first-degree criminal charge. The news of his arrest shocked the Mount Holly community, where he had previously been known as a first responder. After being taken into custody, Joshua spent several days in detention before being released on a $1.5 million bond. It was later determined that part of the bond may have been secured with outside financial support. A court order prohibited Joshua from using any of the insurance payout funds tied to Stacy's passing until the legal process was fully resolved. This restriction was put in place to preserve the right of Stacy's parents to file a civil claim seeking the return of those funds as improperly obtained. Soon after, prosecutors filed additional charges for insurance fraud. When Joshua submitted his claim to the insurance companies, he signed a declaration stating there were no suspicious circumstances surrounding the death, a statement that investigators later found to be false. Prosecutors viewed this as a deliberate attempt to mislead insurers for financial gain. Meanwhile, Susie and John Robinson filed a petition in court seeking a review of custody arrangements for their granddaughters. They argued that, given the ongoing criminal investigation and the nature of the accusations against the girl's father, continued residence with him might not be in their best interest. The Robinsons requested temporary suspension of Joshua's guardianship and that the daughters be placed under their care. A court hearing was scheduled, but the final decision was postponed pending further developments in the criminal case. Under growing pressure, Joshua began mounting a legal defense. He hired attorneys who argued that the case lacked direct evidence. The defense claimed that the prosecution was built on circumstantial details and that the presence of the substance in Stacy's bloodstream wasn't definitive proof of wrongdoing. However, several witnesses came forward in support of the prosecution, including Joshua's co-workers. New statements also emerged from former acquaintances, some of whom said Joshua had previously expressed dissatisfaction with his marriage and mentioned ongoing financial struggles. As the case moved forward, the court imposed certain restrictions while awaiting trial. Joshua was barred from leaving the state and was required to report regularly to law enforcement. His career as a paramedic and healthcare worker quickly unraveled. He was suspended from his position, and his medical license was placed on hold. By the end of 2019, Joshua Hansaker was under mounting legal and civil pressure, with criminal charges from the state and custody battles initiated by Stacy's family. Investigators continued to strengthen their case, uncovering additional incidents based on his actions after the initial arrest. One such incident occurred in early November 2019 in North Carolina, involving an Atrium Health medevac helicopter. Joshua was still working as a flight paramedic at the time, despite being under investigation in connection with his wife's death, less than 2 months before his arrest. During a routine flight, a fire broke out in the tail section of the helicopter. The pilot noticed emergency alerts and immediately initiated an emergency landing at the nearest available site. Thankfully, all crew and passengers were unharmed, but the aircraft sustained significant damage. An investigation was launched to determine the cause of the fire. Preliminary findings revealed flammable liquid in areas where it shouldn't have been present. There were also signs of tampering with one of the helicopter's systems. Security footage placed Joshua Hansaker near the aircraft prior to takeoff, outside his scheduled shift, and without other personnel present. Law enforcement and officials from the Federal Aviation Administration conducted multiple interviews. Joshua claimed he was simply checking equipment and performing routine pre-flight tasks. However, internal protocols from Atrium Health indicated that another staff member was assigned to that inspection. Joshua had no authorized reason to be near the helicopter, and his presence at the time was never officially accounted for. A few weeks into the investigation, it was discovered that shortly before the helicopter incident, Hansaker had purchased an aerosol containing flammable substances. The transaction was recorded at a gas station and paid for with his personal card. The chemical makeup of the spray matched what investigators later found inside the aircraft's interior panels. These findings became the foundation for a new case, one centered around intentional arson. Investigators were now faced with determining the motive: sabotage, an attempt to create a distraction, or perhaps an emotional breakdown stemming from the ongoing legal pressure. Mental health experts suggested that the act might not have stemmed solely from harmful intent. It could have been a way of coping with overwhelming stress, a cry for help, an effort to draw sympathy, or a tactic to redirect public focus toward a different crisis. Still, investigators remained focused on the facts. The official charge was filed as intentional damage to an aircraft posing a risk to human life. Although this was not directly related to the case involving Stacy's death, it added a new layer to the overall picture. A person already under scrutiny for a serious offense was now connected to another incident involving public safety. The helicopter fire incident significantly impacted public perception. It was no longer just about what may have happened in the past, but about current behavior that seemed to reinforce concerns about volatility and risk-taking tendencies. Then in February 2023, Joshua Hansaker contacted law enforcement with a dramatic claim. He reported being the target of a kidnapping attempt and stated that he had been forcibly taken by unknown individuals. According to his version, on February 21st, he stepped outside his home to take out the trash. At that moment, a car allegedly pulled up. A man got out, threatened him with a weapon, and forced him into the vehicle. Joshua claimed he was held in the trunk for several hours before being released. He also told officers he had a suspicion about who might be behind the incident, naming John Robinson, Stacy's father. The allegation came as a shock to everyone involved, including law enforcement. Accusing an elderly man under immense emotional strain after losing his daughter seemed far-fetched. Nonetheless, police documented the report and launched an inquiry. They collected footage from neighborhood security cameras and pulled GPS data from Joshua's phone. They also canvassed the area, asking neighbors to share any footage from home security systems. The footage told a very different story. No vehicle was seen near the house. No signs of any confrontation or suspicious activity were captured. In fact, the cameras showed Joshua walking out of the house alone, never approaching a car, and returning through the back door about 30 minutes later. Location data from his phone confirmed he never left the coverage area of the nearest cell tower. Investigators were left with no doubt. The kidnapping story had been fabricated. Joshua had given false statements to law enforcement, and his accusations against John Robinson were entirely baseless. When questioned directly about his motive for making the false report, Joshua was unable to provide a coherent explanation. As a result, a new case was opened against Hansaker, this time for making a false report and attempting to obstruct justice. Case documents suggested that the fabricated abduction may have been a strategy to discredit the Robinson family amid the ongoing custody dispute and the looming criminal trial related to Stacy's death. For John Robinson, the experience was deeply personal and distressing. Though his name appeared in official police records only briefly as a potential suspect, the emotional impact was significant. Police later issued a formal apology and officially voided all documents containing the false accusation. But the attempt to frame him stood as further evidence of how far Joshua was willing to go to manipulate the outcome of his legal troubles. the staged kidnapping charge was added to the growing list of allegations against Hans Zucker. This incident strengthened the prosecution's case ahead of trial, suggesting that the defendant not only lacked remorse, but was actively trying to mislead authorities through deception and false accusations. In the spring of 2023, a new development raised even greater concern. Piper, the 10-year-old daughter of Stacy and Joshua, who was at the time under temporary care of the Robinson family, began exhibiting unusual symptoms: excessive fatigue, dizziness, weakness, low blood pressure, and a slowed heart rate. Her family immediately sought medical help. Upon admission to a medical facility, doctors performed a routine evaluation. Given the family history and Stacy's case, a toxicology screening was added to the diagnostic process. The results were alarming. Traces of tetrahydrozoline, the same chemical compound linked to Stacy's passing, were found in Piper's system. The concentration was lower than what had been detected in Stacy, but still exceeded safe limits. Medical experts concluded that the exposure was likely intentional and warned that the outcome could have been fatal. Investigators quickly launched an inquiry into Piper's living environment. The primary goal was to determine how the substance entered her body. Interviews with the guardians revealed that no eye drops containing the compound were kept in the house. Piper had never been prescribed or given any such product, nor had she complained of any eye-related issues. There were no records of visits to an eye specialist or related prescriptions. However, a search of Joshua's home uncovered a bottle of eye drops containing tetrahydrozoline. The bottle was not expired, and the usage level indicated it had been recently opened. Investigators also found an empty blister pack of medication not listed in Piper's medical records, a drug known to intensify the effects of overdose from vasoconstrictors. Investigators discovered that just days before Piper's symptoms began, Joshua had been granted short-term visitation approved by the court. During that visit, Piper was left alone with him, without any other adults present. Within 24 hours of the visit, she began experiencing the first signs of distress. This gave Hans Zucker both the opportunity and the time frame to potentially add something to her food or drink. Authorities developed a new theory, that Joshua had intentionally exposed his daughter to the substance in an attempt to shift blame onto the Robinson family. If law enforcement suspected neglect or abuse under their care, it could have resulted in the family losing custody, potentially placing Piper back under Joshua's influence. This also explained why the dosage wasn't lethal. It was enough to trigger symptoms, but not enough to cause irreversible harm. Prosecutors amended the list of charges to include attempted harm to a minor with intent and aggravating circumstances. In an emergency hearing, the family court revoked all contact rights between Joshua and his daughters. Based on the risk posed to the girls and what was viewed as a calculated attempt to manipulate the situation through the use of a minor, the court initiated proceedings to permanently transfer full custody to the Robinson family. They were also granted the right to pursue a civil lawsuit against Hans Zucker for endangering the child's health and safety. By mid-2024, Joshua Hans Zucker's behavior had taken an even more concerning turn. He began actively stalking Stacy's parents, Susie and John Robinson. Their home came under what felt like constant, covert surveillance. Susie and John started noticing direct signs of intimidation. Anonymous envelopes began appearing in their mailbox, containing personal family photos and recent pictures of their home taken from close range. One envelope included an unsigned note that read, "I see everything. I'm close." There was little doubt as to who was behind it. Strange packages started arriving at their home. One day, they received a box filled with children's clothes and toys. The next, a food container with leftovers, labeled "For the Memories." The packages came sporadically, but always anonymously. Investigators later traced the shipments to mail lockers in multiple cities, sent using fake accounts. John installed security cameras around their property. In one recording, a hooded figure, resembling Joshua in build, was seen walking past their home late at night. stopping and pointing a phone toward the house, apparently filming. That incident was the final straw. The family filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office, citing harassment and threats to their safety. Prosecutors petitioned the court for additional restrictions, citing Hansaker's violation of prior court orders prohibiting any form of contact with the Robinsons. The court approved the motion and issued an arrest warrant. In August 2024, Joshua Hansaker was taken into custody once again. A search of his home uncovered compelling evidence: packing supplies, empty envelopes, printed photographs, and a laptop containing drafts of messages directed at the Robinson family. Investigators also found a detailed map marked with addresses, routes, and surveillance points. During questioning, Hansaker claimed he was merely gathering evidence and monitoring the situation. He denied any intent to intimidate, insisting he had the right to document events to protect his interests. His arrest was extended without the option for bail. This incident became a turning point in shaping the prosecution's final stance. It clearly demonstrated that the defendant was not just defending himself within legal boundaries, but was actively interfering with the process through intimidation and manipulation. The trial of Joshua Hansaker began in the first half of 2025, marking the conclusion of a lengthy and complex investigation spanning more than 6 years. The case materials included dozens of witnesses, hundreds of pages of evidence, surveillance footage, toxicology and forensic reports, and a detailed timeline going back to 2018. The central charge focused on first-degree intentional poisoning of his spouse. Prosecutors presented the court with a clear, methodical narrative of the series of actions Hansaker had taken. In the courtroom, Susie and John Robinson were present at every session. The prosecution emphasized that this was not just about someone who had committed a crime in the past, but about an individual who had consistently violated the law over several years. The closing argument ended with the statement, "Joshua Hansaker is a dangerous and calculating individual, incapable of remorse." The jury reached a unanimous verdict. Joshua Lee Hansaker was found guilty on all major counts: first-degree intentional harm resulting in death, witness intimidation, false reporting, attempted harm to a minor, and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A separate decision from family court permanently granted full custody of the daughters to the Robinson family. The girls received new documentation with their father's last name legally removed. They were provided with psychological support and approved to transfer to a different school and relocate. The case of Joshua Hansaker, widely covered by the media, highlighted just how difficult it can be to uncover a calculated crime disguised as a natural passing. The persistence of the family, the professionalism of investigators, and the strength of the evidence led to a just outcome, but also underscored the enormous effort required to reach the truth. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.